Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a really fascinating sequel about intentional parenting. We're going to look at exactly how those grueling, incredibly demanding early lessons of respect actually manifest later in life. So let's dive right in, because we're looking at a real-life case study that perfectly bridges the gap between intense childhood discipline and just profound adult empathy.
Right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself a pretty fundamental question. When the ultimate test comes knocking, do the hardest character lessons actually stick? Like, do the strict boundaries we set for kids create true, deep-rooted character, or do they just create temporary obedience? You know, it's so easy to enforce rules when we're the ones watching, but what happens when the kids are older, when they have a choice, and when someone else desperately needs their help? Does the architecture hold up?
Section 1. The Foundation of Respect. Let's do a quick refresher and re-establish the baseline of Elena's absolute architecture of character from our previous explainer, just to make sure we're all on the same page about how this specific family operates.
What's really fascinating here is the profound contrast in Elena's philosophy. It's kind of like a tale of two extremes. On one hand, she gave her kids total, absolute freedom when it came to academics. Literally zero discipline was used for a B- on a report card. No forced extra tutoring, nothing like that. But on the other hand, she demanded absolute, unyielding respect for every single person they interacted with, no matter their position in life. For Elena, respect was the entire foundation. If that was missing, the whole machine just stopped.
You might remember how intensely she actually enforced this. When her young daughter Maya threw some attitude at their driver David, Elena didn't just scold her, she completely revoked the privilege of the family car. She forced Maya to take grueling public transit for the rest of the entire term. We're talking 5 a.m. alarms, navigating these dark overhead bridges, and carrying her own heavy bags. Maya even fell on those uneven steps once, bloodying her pristine white school uniform, but she flat out refused to let the family helper Chita carry her bag for her. She didn't want the easy way out. That was the intense, absolute non-negotiable standard of humility that was set.
Section 2. A Crisis of Compassion. Let's fast forward a bit to late 2025, where this deep foundation of respect collides with a massive, real-world crisis. This is where the theory of character actually meets reality.
Around November and December of 2025, Elena faced a serious, heart-wrenching puzzle. Her helper, Chita's friend, a woman named Chita, was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Now, Elena being Elena, she immediately took action. She stepped up and flew Chita's mother and brother in from overseas so she wouldn't have to go through this alone. But housing them turned into a massive logistical hurdle. Elena wanted them to stay at her place, but her husband drew a firm boundary. He was uncomfortable having a strange man, Chita's brother, in the house, and felt he really needed to protect their own young daughter, which, is totally understandable.
Section 3. Uncompromising altruism. This roadblock forced Elena to look for outside help. She couldn't host them herself, but abandoning this family? Just absolutely not an option. So she turned to her sister, asking for the use of their empty apartment and explicitly offering to pay 30 days of rent to cover it. This right here brilliantly illustrates the divide between people who just talk about their values and people who actually act on them. While Elena's brother-in-law came up with this laundry list of excuses to turn down the request out of fear, worrying about neighbors complaining or somehow getting evicted, Elena demonstrated uncompromising action. She didn't just accept defeat. Instead, she and a few of her friends pooled their own money together and rented a service department for Chita's family for 6 solid weeks. And even while Elena was overseas, she kept wiring them money for living expenses. She was completely repulsed by the assumptions being made about Chita's family by her brother-in-law. She firmly stated her core philosophy: people may be poor, but that does not make them criminals. This deep-seated belief that poverty does not equate to criminality, that is exactly what drove her unwavering altruistic response.
Section 4. The Ultimate Character Test. Okay, so securing housing was really only part one of the problem. As Chita began her chemotherapy, a new, entirely different logistical nightmare popped up. Her employers were away, and while they allowed her to stay out, they strictly forbade her family, especially her brother, from visiting her flat. This left Chita completely isolated exactly when she needed physical support the most.
Without her family allowed to help her travel, Chita was staring down an absolutely exhausting, multi-step public transit commute. Picture this. She had to walk to the bus stop, take one bus, and then transfer to a second bus just to reach the cancer center. And she was expected to do all of this while actively weakened and drained by chemotherapy. It was literally an impossible ask for someone fighting for their life.
And this brings us right back to the family car. Honestly, this is where the story gives me absolute chills. Elena told their driver, David,
to fetch Chita and take her to the cancer center. But doing that meant the family car wouldn't be available for her kids. And here is the spectacular payoff of that early architecture of character. Instead of whining about it, and instead of being forced into it like Maya was years ago, Maya and her younger brother Leo completely, willingly volunteered. They freely chose to give up the luxury of the private car and take public transport themselves, just so David could use the car to transport Chita instead. No way they would have done that without those early lessons.
Section 5. Compassion personified. When you zoom out and look at the macro level of what happened here, you see how this entire situation came together into just this beautiful, tightly coordinated effort of empathy. It's like a giant puzzle perfectly clicking into place.
Every single person in this household played a role rooted deeply in respect and care. Elena organized and funded the apartment and living expenses. David, the driver, fetched Chita and safely drove her to chemo. Chita, the helper, stepped up to accompany Chita after her treatments, making sure she wouldn't have to physically struggle up the stairs to her flat alone while she was weak. And Maya and Leo, they voluntarily sacrificed their daily convenience, taking the bus without a single complaint. It absolutely proves that Elena's incredibly strict early boundaries didn't just create obedient kids. Actually, scratch that. They created far more than that. Those rules evolved directly into profound, voluntary altruism.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. You know, it's really easy to say we care. It's super easy to preach about respect and empathy when it costs us nothing, right? But whether you're a parent, a mentor, or just navigating your own life, you have to ask yourself, what do your core values truly look like in action? Do they manifest as real, voluntary sacrifices when others are in desperate need? Elena's family showed us exactly what it looks like when character is truly built to last. Thank you so much for joining me today to unpack this incredible, deeply moving, real-life story of compassion personified. It's stories exactly like this that remind us why doing the hard work of building character is just so absolutely vital. Keep learning, keep questioning your own boundaries, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.